Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Growth Talks. My guest today with me is Kristina Quinones. Kristina, welcome to Growth Talks, and thank you for your time. How are you today?
I'm doing okay, and thank you so much, Raf, for having me on. I'm very excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure for me. So I wanna, I try to start with this podcast always with a simple one, with a classic question. So tell us, who you are, what you do, and what you love.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Raf mentioned, my name is Kristina Quinones. I am currently a director of growth marketing at Automattic for WordPress.com. Prior to that, I was at Meet Edgar, which was a significantly smaller startup, but my background is effectively customer experience with a lot of focus on life cycle marketing, that part of the customer journey. As far as what do I like, I really enjoy thinking through that puzzle, that problem of defining what a customer's pain and passion points are, because they do, there's a balance there, and it's depending on the product, it's sometimes not as easy as following your roadmap, for go to market or anything like that. So it's always fun trying to figure out how to interact with and connect to your customer, and that's my favorite part is puzzling out those
Hmm.
pieces.
I have a question for you about that, but we talk about it later. I was curious, what's it's like your day-to-day job in a company like Automatic, working on a product like WordPress, with a huge user base around the world.
Yeah, and that's a really great question. So Automatic, if for anyone who's unfamiliar with it, it is the company behind WordPress.com, and we do have a very strong relationship with WordPress.org. So there's a lot of there's a lot of synergy between the two teams, to use some jargon there, or the two products basically. Essentially, WordPress.com is our hosted version of it, but we do work very closely with the opensource.org teams. As far as my day to day here, it's a really interesting place to work. I like to call the way Automatic is structured like sort of pseudo flat, and there are a lot of cross functional teams, pods or groups, really all three at any given time, to be honest, across all aspects of the product. As far as your priorities are concerned, a lot of the times those are the details of them. You are able to get into the nitty gritty and scope out the each project, each objective, or whatever with your respective team, or your pod if you're a part of a pod. And then the larger sort of North Star goals, those come from our leadership team, and then we're basically working towards them. Um, with a product like WordPress.com, there's a lot that moves very quickly. So, to be honest, a lot of the times, what is easy or what is useful is to focus on a specific friction point, an internal friction point. So that internal friction point could be fixing, like, hey, why are we seeing a drop off here? Or how do we increase the conversion rate from free sign up to paid, like the 24-hour conversion rate? What I've found is that it's a lot. It's really useful to focus on one of those points in the customer journey, and then just hyper focus on that. Keep your attention all on that, and keep the ball moving there. So as far as my day to day is concerned, I do a lot of project updates, researching, analyzing the numbers related to the whatever key metrics I'm currently looking at. Um, and a lot of writing copy. So that's really fun. Sometimes not. Sometimes you want a little bit of a break from that. Also, a lot of running experiments in growth
Hmm.
channels in our on our team specifically. Another thing about that I'd like to add is that could change at any time. Another thing at Automatic is that because things are so dynamic and things are moving so quickly, at any given time, your team's purpose or your role could really just change based on what what the company's needs are, and to a lesser extent, but not less important, also where your personal passions lie, as far as
Hmm.
what your work can or could consist of as you grow your career.
Hmm. I like that. Yeah, that's a good one. Um, I really loved the the your talk at the Growth Hackers conference
Thank
this
you.
year. I loved it. I sent you an email.
Yeah.
I really loved it, and I'm also a huge fan of customer interviews and questions and collecting qualitative data. So I'd like to know what's your approach to interviews, interviews, surveys, and qualitative data in your job.
Yeah, that's a great question. My preference is that we do two things. We keep the questions as open ended as possible, whilst
Mm,
also, the second part of it, respecting the customer's time. Really,
mm,
they are doing us a service, a great service, to provide us with any feedback at all, right? So my approach is to essentially keep it simple and keep it open. Try your best to absolutely positively do not lead the customer in telling you what their answers could be, which is why one of my favorite questions to ask there is, what successes have you seen? It's really
mm,
open. You can't really say yes or no to that question, and you will open the customer up to giving you responses in positive or negative there, and then they're really willing, in my experience at least, to tell you their story with your
mm,
product from there. So gives you a lot of stuff to explore, as far as like reusable content there, testimonials and such, as well as areas where you might be able to reach parity better. It's a That's probably, if I could ask just one question of any customer ever going forward in any customer research, that would be it. That, alongside, of course, your standard CSAT, customer satisfaction score, or the CES score, customer effort score. Those three components, I think, can give you a lot to chew on, as if you're a smaller company, as like the product slash UX slash product
mm,
marketing, or if you're a lot bigger company like Automattic, on any team that deals with customer facing content, it gives you a lot of stuff to jump off of.
and I was curious if you so you have, like, let's say, a set of best practice for your team regarding questions and customer interviews. You have something like that or no?
We don't have anything formal at Automatic, and the reason why, it
Okay.
is related to how, like I mentioned, things are constantly changing. The company is quite large, and there are also a number of different teams um, that touch the customer communication. So
Oh,
that's one
okay.
of those things that does. I wouldn't say there aren't any best practices. It's more that the best practices are constantly evolving, depending on the season of the company, basically, and which team is performing the actual research. What works best for one team might not work well for another.
Okay.
So, for example, somebody who's looking a team that's looking specifically at onboarding might not find as much value in my favorite question,
Yeah.
what are the successes you've seen, as as my team would. My team, we're looking at trying to ramp up that free to paid conversion, and we are looking for those talking points to reflect back to me, or back to the customers, like, here's how you can see success. Here are the successes that you can and will see with the
Mm,
product. That might not, again, be as useful for some teams, so the approaches could be different. But at Automatic, we use P2 as a essentially a canonical reference. So anything and everything that we do here, it's best practice there is that we do record it for posterity, and then that way, whatever I do, whatever another team does, it's there for reference for other teams as they explore customer research, or as they dive into historical data to inform their decisions.
Okay. And when you need to ask those kind of questions, do you prefer like one-to-one interview, or you just send a like a survey to your, to your email list, or I don't know, bring people to the office, I don't know, Skype and Zoom interview? What's your favorite channel? How do you approach that?
I feel like this is almost a controversial question. um, but so
Oh, sorry for
personally,
that.
no, oh no, not at all. It's just that it's funny because I actually feel really strongly that for the most part, interviews should be, again, so short and so inviting for the customer to tell their story that you don't need that one-on-one interaction for
Okay.
as the default baseline. However, there are going to be cases where it is better to do an interview, heuristic testing, for example, or if you're doing
Okay.
like proper user testing while you're developing like a new feature or something like that, or when you're like still heavily in a validation phase. Those are times when I do think that it would be much more useful to actually try to get a cross section of people who may potentially be part of your customer base and do those in person. So probably at this point in time, virtual, do those sort of in person interviews. However, my default is, as far as like moving quickly, getting your responses quickly, is to iterate on and optimize the asynchronous communication.
Mm.
So email surveys essentially.
Okay. 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 So it depends a lot from the situation as well.
Yeah, I do think
Okay.
people should default to asynchronous. However, there is room and space for end times when the one-to-one will be better.
Okay. 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 Yeah, I see that. I see. Uh, what are your favorite questions? I mean, you told us one or two before, and also why. But do you have something more that you want to add?
Yeah, yeah. So that first question, like I mentioned before, is like, what are the successes that you've seen with our product? I think that'll tell you a
Mm,
lot. The other questions that I like to ask would be related to just referability. Sorry, I'm
mm.
blanking on any other way to to say
Yeah.
that
Yeah. I see
word.
what you mean. Yeah.
Um, but if you were to depending on if you've paired this with like a specific score, an NPS basically, but like essentially what we want to ask them is like, if you were to refer us to somebody, what would you say? How would you describe the product? I think that's quite useful to get responses to that, to see how, basically in their own words, how do customers even feel about the product? How do they feel about the brand? What does the perception look like? Is the value that they're getting out of it actually what we were trying to sell them on in the first place, or something else completely? I definitely saw that a lot at Meet Edgar during my time there, is that sometimes the value that people, a lot of the times actually, the value that people are getting out of the product isn't necessarily related basically in any way whatsoever to some of the copy that we put out or some of the promotions that we put
Mm,
out.
mm, mm.
Um, I also uh, just like asking for honestly open-ended feedback. Hey, like, what do you want to tell us? Like, what do you want to see? I think that's really useful for specifically competitive intelligence and being able to analyze what the space looks like then. Because as you know, people are not shy about telling you what you're missing or what they can see anywhere else. So that I think is a lot more important than people give it credit for. The thing is with especially qualitative sort of feedback, it takes a lot of time and effort for someone to sit down there and do the analysis. You could do the like word clouds and looking at like phrase and word frequency and stuff like that. That still takes time. There's still a lot of I think training and what is this? A lot of training needed, and just skill necessary to be able to take those nuggets of feedback and apply them to your business needs
Mm,
without getting bogged down in, honestly, personal feelings. That's why
mm.
I think it's quite important to really get that cross section, to do these sorts of things and ask these questions, not just once, but at a regular cadence. So that could be quarterly, that could be yearly, that could be, a lot of people like to do NPS score like within like the first 14 days, for example, but just continuously do it and continuously um, look at your feedback. I also think it's important to never have just one person be in charge of the
Mm,
analysis, even if one person does a lot of the heavy, a lot of the grunt work. Because quite honestly, depending on the company, depending on the time of the year, then not everyone has all the resources in the world to sit there and do something. Um, the insights and feedback should absolutely, definitely be reviewed by other team members at any given time. People should be encouraged to look for additional insights that the original researcher may have missed. They should look for opportunities to challenge even the play devil's advocate a little bit with the feedback that you're getting. Like where are these things maybe not necessarily representative of the experience, and why is that? Is there actually not so much a product parity issue, but a brand perception issue that we need to resolve? So there's yeah, I'm sorry, I talked a lot, but that's
no, no,
that's like
no.
a
That's great.
bit
Actually,
of an
go for it. That's I'm
yeah.
loving it. So
Yeah, I think that's really quite important. It does take a lot of practice to be objective. That's the word I was looking for. To be
yeah,
objective about this stuff when it's beyond just a score.
yeah,
However, the score only tells us so much. We absolutely positively need to hear in their own words what people
yeah.
actually think and what they're looking for, what they need. Are we actually providing the value they're asking for? Um, and again, if not just to make changes to the copy or make changes to the product, it gives you a lot of clues about where the industry might be heading, which is useful if you don't necessarily have an entire dedicated R&D team. If
Mm,
the R&D essentially effectively falls to marketing, as it may in a lot of smaller companies, then that's another benefit of making sure that you are continuously doing customer research at regular intervals, and you are always looking at it and analyzing it and taking those insights and feeding them back into business decisions being made.
mm. I love the topic, and I have a few more questions about that. You just said something that was really, I don't know, it was really important for me. You said it's important to have more people involved in the, in the process, and to also, have different point of views
Yes.
to challenge, the person that is, in charge of the analysis. Okay, that's great, but do you think that we need people with a, with like a training to do that, or you just want, like five different people from the same team, looking at the data and try to get some, insights and useful information? How do you approach that? You need people, with a special training to analyze the data, or it's just important to get the, different
Mm.
point of views?
I think that having a diversity of viewpoints is more important. If everyone is able to be trained, that'd be fantastic. I mean, at the very least, having sort of like guidelines for how to filter through feedback and be able to um, sort of have a foundation for what is
Mm,
how to read feedback in a more objective way. That is, obviously very useful and would probably help things go more smoothly. But I do think that a diversity of viewpoints would probably make more sense. Um,
okay.
and actually, one of the things that you said, like just have like a few different people from the same team look at it. If it's a smaller company and the whole team across departments is like 10 people, then like sure. But actually, at a medium sized to large organizations, I do think that it would be important then for specifically for customer research for the stakeholders involved to be from different areas of the
Oh,
company. So
okay.
marketing, customer support, or customer success, or both, depending on what the company actually has. Somebody from product, and then somebody who's who's more of a business stakeholder. I do think, which in a lot of the time is actually within marketing. Sometimes it's in finance. Not everyone has to sit there and care about it like 95% of their day as much as the person who's actually in charge of leading the project. But I do think that having all those people as stakeholders to that the outcomes of that research is very, 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 very important. Um, Otherwise, you do run the risk, I think, like even if it's different people on the same team. I mean, the fact is a marketing team isn't going to have the same immediate objectives, right, as
Mm,
like a product team, or usability, or the customer support team. So yeah, having a cross section of the company functions as far as like when you're reviewing or analyzing, or at the very least when you're at the discussion phase and trying to pick out those
mm,
business insights that you are going to take action on. I do think that is very, very important, and that is um, one of the areas I think that ends up getting missed. And I think this is why a lot of people sort of they're kind of wary of customer research if it's not already part of the culture of the company, because they're like, it's going to take a lot of time, and hey, we did this survey 2 years ago and we didn't do anything about it. Well, that's the point, is that you do something about it, and that doing something about it could be a summary post with like key takeaways,
mm,
and then maybe not there isn't that much that's like actionable there. That's okay. You run it again next year, and you keep on seeing where you can iterate. Does it actually align with your company goals? Is this actually realistic, then your company goals, based on like what you're seeing, like things like that, like even if there isn't something new that the company can build, there's always something you can learn from that customer feedback, even if it's just proving something wrong or not so right or whatever. I said that awkwardly, but even if it's just to validate things that have already been discussed, or to see if your projections were right or not. Like there's always something that you can take away from it. But it does have to become a habit for the culture at your company to seek
mm.
out those insights and think about them thoughtfully.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. It's always, mindset before tools,
Yes,
always.
exactly. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, I love it. I love it. You said something really interesting there, and I was wondering if do you think there are like main errors, mistakes that people do, company do, when they have to, ask questions and do interviews and collect qualitative data.
Yes. So I can't think of an example off the top of my head right now, but essentially asking leading questions to the customers, that it's basically like, I mean, don't you just love it? It's like, no. I mean, and arguably my favorite question of like, what successes have you seen, is, arguably that could be leading. But effectively, I think that, asking questions to get the answers that you want to
Mm,
hear is sort of that, if pulling it back a little bit, that is the mistake that I feel that some teams or companies can make. And then also not having the an objective group or person do the not just analysis but then the presentation of the information. That's something that happens, I think, quite often. I mean, there's a there are some parts there that you're probably not gonna be able to remove from the process completely, because we are all just human with our our own stories in our heads and our own feelings and whatnot. But I think the first step is just being aware of those biases that we each do have and might not be aware of when we are looking at this data. I mean, how often do we just fall into that trap of being like the customer, but then not thinking of that customer as a person. You're kind of just thinking about the customer as like they're just like
yeah,
a line on a spreadsheet. As here's their
yeah,
user ID and this is the thing that they made. It's like, no, 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 no. That person is like, it's a customer with a they are a customer, yeah, but they are a person with their hopes, their goals, their frustrations, before and after they actually use our product or experience our website or whatever. Um, so I think that that's something that's we can be aware of, and won't go away completely, but again, being aware of uh, the need for objectivity when reviewing
Mm.
this data is something that I think a lot of companies can probably work on, or at least stay on top of if it's something that they are already aware of.
Yeah. And you said something uh, that's this is probably one of the most difficult things about interviews and collective qualitative data, when you spoke about biases. That's hard. That's
Yeah.
really, really hard. So it can help having like different people, like you were saying before.
Mhm.
But do you have any, tips and tricks to avoid that, or trying at least to avoid it?
Yeah, yeah. I think that having always pairing your open-ended feedback with a number score of some sort. So again, like the customer
Mm,
satisfaction or the customer effort score, or both, if you have room for it, is useful in that regard, to be able to um, sort of map the qualitative feedback to an actual score. That helps people, I think, get grounded. In what they're actually reading or looking at when it does come time for the analysis. And another one is to always be thinking at the outcomes that the
mm,
customers are looking for when you're designing your questions and when you're reading their responses. It's very, very easy, for example, if someone like gives horrible feedback and they're like, I hate your product, this is terrible, just whatever, go away, you shouldn't be on the internet anymore. It's really easy to sort of like take that personally,
mm,
I think if you're not familiar with the process of collating feedback and going through it, but um, if you are looking at it as far as the outcomes and the amount of time and money that the customers actually spent with the product, I think it's a lot easier to let go of what you think the customers should feel or think about your product, and it's a lot easier to sort of get into empathy mode for the customer. And I think that approaching analysis, it's almost like oxymoron, but approaching the qualitative analysis, at least with some empathy, alongside your objectivity, and looking at things through the lens of what is the outcome our customers are actually looking for, um, can really help, I think, put people in that mindset of yeah, just being able to take those useful business insights from your customer research and your surveys without letting themselves fall into the traps of seeing things through the lenses of their own biases.
mm. Yeah, yeah. I think empathy is the key here.
Mm,
It's
yes.
probably the most important word that you
Yeah.
used. And it's hard to have empathy if you know think of users like a list of emails,
Yes.
in your CRM, or somewhere
Right.
else. That's why we have to remember that they are actual, real people with
Yeah.
feelings and goals, and and problems and stuff. So yeah, that's really, really important, but also really hard. A few days ago, no, a few weeks ago actually, I was writing a blog post about the importance of customer journey, and on your blog, I found a really, really interesting and great blog post on the topic, when you spoke about passion points and friction points. I love that.
Oh, thank you.
Uh, Tell us more about it. I think that's
Yes.
really interesting, that the double point of view.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that at this point, the passion points they're probably fairly well known, but definitely not as well known as pain points. As people who work in SaaS, or internet, on the internet, marketing, whatever. I think that a lot of our focus is on pain points, pain points, pain points. How can we solve this pain point? How can we solve this pain point? I'm not saying that we forget about them, but a lot of the times, the solving of the pain points, like, they really, like, practically speaking, that is often a function of R&D, or development engineers product designers when it comes to the marketing side of things. So what we need to do then is take like, okay, so we've got the solution. Yes, continue to be aware of the pain points, but our bigger problem is, okay, so how can I actually move this product from being something that's like for sale to something that is sold? You have to think about what actually makes the customer take action. What compels them to take that action of adding their email address to your mailing list, or adding the thing to their cart and making that purchase. And that, I think, is often underutilized as an insight. The idea that we don't always have to be like, hey, I can solve your problem. I can do 1,001 things for you. A lot of the times it's not about that. We're not really a lot of the time selling for the features. What we want to do is help the user see the outcome. And this is obviously easier said than done. But if you are able to present to the customer the the that insight, or that piece of copy or whatever that moves them to action, like that is their passion point. Like what moved them to feel good about your brand? What made them decide like, hey, this is the one for me, this resonates with me? Those are the passion points that I think we often end up ignoring, not on purpose, but just because there's often so much of a focus on presenting features as fixes to various pain points. If we reframe that thinking to be like, okay, rather than remind our customers that they have problems that need to be solved, we instead present them with a glimmer of hope for a better future. And that could be like, I don't know, you get to inbox zero faster. There's like fewer for something like Grammarly. You'll be a better writer, things like that. Like how do you cultivate those passion points and turn that into customer communication? I think is like it's that's the $1 million question. If we could figure that out for everything, like probably somebody could turn it into an app and none of us would have
Yeah.
jobs as marketers. But um, that I think is something that it definitely requires more attention. I think from marketers in general, is understanding not just what problems you're solving. That's kind of a given. Otherwise, there would be no product. Um, but also paying attention to what makes people actually buy, and what makes
Mm.
people feel, and what makes people take any action at all. Because it's not a list of features isn't going to do that. That
Yeah.
it's there. People look for it, but that's not what's that's the internet is not a novelty anymore. It's like this is just the way people live. At this point, we have to dig a little bit deeper. And if you are trying to connect a customer to the outcomes that your product promises, really do that. Don't just list features. Don't just say, hey, I can fix your problem. Why remind them that they have a problem? Just present them instead with the hope for some improvements in their life. They're gonna see something's gonna be a lot easier for them 6 weeks from now or something, or they're gonna have uh, a lot of success with your product, or in the next month or so, something like that. It's just that's I think if I had to distill it down, it's more about looking at the positives and presenting those to the customers,
Mm.
rather than looking at the negatives and what they don't have. Does the other way work?
Mm.
Sure. But customers are also quite savvy, and at this point, to stand out, I think we do have to look more towards helping them fulfill their dreams or aspirations, no matter what product it is that we're selling.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And while you were talking, I was wondering, do you have a kind of framework to do that? How do you do that?
Ooh, um, so I don't have a formal framework, but that's got me thinking. Maybe I should write that down. But
Yes, please do.
well, you know what? I think I will. But to go back to the customer research stuff that we were talking about, like the way that the way that you can use this practically. If you're like, I have no idea what my customers are passionate about, that's cool. You did some research, right? Let's look at those positive ones, the ones that were neutral to positive. What are the the words and the phrases and the outcomes that people described as a success, or at the very least not a failure? What are some of those things? Those give you the clues for your passion points, like the words that customers actually use to describe their experience with your product, good or bad. Like that's it. That's gonna tell you exactly where to start. So not quite a framework, but if you're not sure where to start, that's probably going to be the best place to go, is to start with a simple survey asking customers what their successes have been with your product. Take that content that you've received and look for the patterns in the again, outcomes described, the phrases people use, and then take that, and then you can reflect it back to your incoming customers. Probably want to do it as a test so that you don't, ruin your funnel if if it doesn't actually work out. Um, but that would be a good way to validate some of that information and see where there might be gaps between what you thought you were selling and what customers are actually um, doing with it, or what, how they actually feel about it after the fact. Um, that would be where to start. But I'm going to have to think a little bit more about that framework question, because I think that that is something that would probably be quite useful to have on hand.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would love it. So let me know if you write about it,
Oh yeah,
or
for
if
sure
you,
I will.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. That would be great. That would be great. So Christina, on this podcast, we love tools and books. So the last couple of questions are going to be about that. So let's start with books. What are you reading right now? And do you have like your, I don't know, some favorite books that you want to tell us and suggest to people?
Yeah, this is a funny question because I have about 10 or maybe 12 books on my to read list, but I've just been so bogged down that I just simply have not done it. So,
Okay.
so I apologize for that. I can't quite answer the what I'm reading now. As
Yeah.
far as what I would recommend, let's see.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the
Tell
books that
us
I have.
some great books that you want to suggest.
Let's see. So for fiction, I would recommend Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. That is stands out in my head as one of my favorite books ever. And I'm looking around because I have a lot of books here. Um, let's see. Oh, and for nonfiction, Atomic Habits, 100%. Um,
Hmm.
Atomic Habits by James Clear. I think that it's a it's a great foundational book for anyone who sort of struggles with creating habits for themselves, or by extension for their teams. But it's also a good reference to have if if you have a nice framework down already. That's great. But it's also good to have, I think, to be able to understand if you're working with colleagues, whether that's like your team or your peers. It's a useful, I think, because it can help you understand um, what you can do to help others succeed better through the use of, like, perhaps instilling some of these the things that James writes about in project management, just like baking it in to how things are run, how your meetings are run, or like whether your team does like daily or weekly stand-ups or something. um, I think that's a really good one. It's not marketing or business y, but I do
Mm-mm-mm.
think that it has a lot of value for anyone who is working on, honestly, projects of any sort. It goes beyond the personal development side of things.
Cool, cool. I leave the links in the description below. And moving to to tools, same question. So what are the best tools that you discovered or used in the last year? Or do you have like some great tools that you wanna, suggest us, your favorite tools?
Yes. So I 100% love Grammarly. And if you are
Mm,
not a Grammarly user, then I would highly
I
suggest that
am.
you give it a try. I love it so much. It's just, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's spell check, but just supercharged, from the spell check that we knew when we were kids, and only had a computer in school, Um, but that is the tool that I would say is top of the list for me as far as what I would recommend for productivity. Also, reclaim.ai, I think is the domain. Let me just double check that.
Say that again. Okay.
Reclaim.ai. It's a time blocking app, which
Mm,
I've found to be incredibly valuable. And it allows me to bake sort of habits. So morning catch
mm,
up, for example, for emails and things like that, or anything else that you'd like to use it for, as well as allows me to keep my personal and work calendars separate,
mm.
while still syncing information across as I want it to. So depending on the calendar, you could do like all the details or just some of the details, but I find that incredibly useful. Um, I have not built an app myself, but that's definitely before I found this, and there are a couple of other ones, but this is my favorite. Before I found this, I'm like, somebody needs to build that. I'm going to build it if there isn't a good solution in like 2 or 3 years. If there isn't something by 2023, I'm going to build it. I'm going to do it. Um, but I'd recommend reclaim.ai for anybody who just has to deal with meetings at all or wants to make use of a smart calendar to build in time for different tasks, whether they're work related or personal. I really like that app quite a lot.
Cool, cool. Thanks for the tips, and I leave the links in the description as well. So before closing and ending this interview, where they can read you, follow you, I don't know, Twitter, blogs, social media, where are you?
Yeah, yeah. So you can find me on Twitter at Kristina Q. So KRISTINAQ. And my personal website is just my name, KristinaQuinones.com. This exactly as it's written in my little title thing here. And yeah, just feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, and links to other social are on my personal website as well if you want to connect any other way.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure having you here on my podcast. It was a great talk today. Thank you,
I
Christina. Have a good
appreciate
one.
it. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.